Good morning. Cav from the Stridecast, back for a fifth episode. Uploaded. This will be fifth conversation that I've had. The goal of the Stridecast is really just. I had a colleague this morning message me from Toronto, and I appreciate her a ton. She says, "Cav, what I'd love to hear from you is, before leading into conversations, is talk a little bit about and remind the audience why it is that you're doing what you're doing and what the intent is of the Stridecast." And so that was incredibly helpful for me to reset a little bit. And so, my goal here is very simple, is to bring on guests that I find incredibly interesting to have conversations with, to spark some inspiration in a time where I think that inspiration is at a premium, and so I can't decide what value you're going to take away from conversations, but I think, the most important part for me and the guests that I sit down with is that we have a real conversation, authentic conversation about all that is that we have happening in our lives now. And then for you as a viewer, to take something away from that. And that's it. So in that, today, I have one of my favorite leaders, Larissa Maxwell. Larissa, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Cav. I'm pumped to be here.
Awesome. Take a sec. Let us know, tell the viewers who you are and how you and I end up here together on a conversation.
Yeah, so I have a very unique role. I'm the Director of Anti-Human Trafficking Programs with the Salvation Army of Canada. That means that I work directly with survivors of labor and sexual human trafficking who've experienced that here on Canadian soil, and offer a variety of programs from intervention to healing and rehabilitation. And I do that within a team of some pretty badass women. There's over 30 of us that get to lead together. And so that's a bit of my background, what I bring to the table today.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. And I can attest to the fact that she has I've been lucky enough to meet a handful of her team members, and yeah, you've got an exceptional team behind you. Risa, tell me about what being a leader in this moment for you, in this time in our history, what does it mean for you? How are you showing up for that kick-ass team?
Yeah, showing up, that's a really great word and concept tied to this. Something that really struck me the other day, so we are frontline responders. So we're not working from home. We are in our programs working frontline with vulnerable people. Some people live in our programs, some live in the community, so we've got really extensive safety measures in place. But as a leader right now, I've really noticed it's actually all of the steps up to this moment that have mattered. Not just choosing to show up now and being that leader and the Army battalion leader that everybody needs. You actually needed to be that leader all the way along. And it's that investment in your people. It's building that interdependence and raising up leaders within your organization that you see in moments like this, whether you have the jam or you don't. And for me, that's really been something that I've seen, especially around the idea of vision. What are we doing and why are we doing it? Why do we show up? And is that coming from a place of wanting to be a superstar and feeling really proud that we're like on the front line? Or does it come from a place of service, of really wanting to serve no matter what the circumstances are? And I think that's something I've really seen as I've watched this team that I have the privilege to lead show up, and show up not in fear, show up because they're equipped and ready for this moment.
Sure.
And I look at that and go, I think that's a huge piece of leading right now. What did you do up to this point?
Yeah. So what I hear there is it's a piece of preparation. So there's I'm losing there's a quote or a beautiful saying that would connect all of this, but preparedness meets opportunity. You know what I'm talking about when rubber hits the road? Yeah, something along those lines. But I'm hearing for you that, look, the preparedness for this was very proactive. It was being invested in your team, being invested in your initiatives from day one. Speaking of, when was your day one? How long have you been with the Salvation Army for in anti-human trafficking?
Yeah, I'm at 7 years with the Salvation Army, and this is my 16th year in the field working in exploitation and human trafficking in Canada.
So tell me about so let's maybe focus in on the last 7 years. What do you think, what are the qualities that you brought forward as a leader when we speak about that preparation and getting you to this point where your team is let's go, business as usual. We're conducting ourselves the way that we have always. Larissa, can you tell me about what you believe your contributions have been in their preparedness?
Yeah, that's a great question. Here's what I hope it's been, and I think what I'm seeing right now. When I came 7 years ago, I met with the whole team together. I was this new leader to them. They were quite close with the previous leader. They weren't sure what to expect. And I laid out right from day one, I said, I follow a servant leadership model. And I explained what that model was in really simplistic terms. I said, really, at the end of the day, the leader is the sending base. We are not the top of a pyramid. We're not the superstar of the organization. We are the sending and equipping base. So everybody comes to that base, gets what they need, but is empowered to go and to walk out their steps of growth and leadership. So I said to a few of them, one of the best things that could happen is for me to be able to invest in you, and you will one day surpass me. I'm not seeking to always stay as someone's boss. I see leadership really as a core function of service. And so if we can serve each other, and if I can serve you, the mark of my leadership is how many leaders I empower and support, whether that's in our field or whether it's beyond the field.
Yep.
And I remember that definitive moment, laying that out, and the team looked at me a little bit confused. I think no matter what people say, there tends to be hierarchies in leadership, even in mentorship. There's always, yes, I'll mentor you, but I'm always going to stay in a higher, stronger position. What does it look like for that person to say to you, one day you might be my boss, and I will celebrate that day. And
That's
so
cool.
It shifted something in the hierarchy for us, where the team built a different kind of respect for what the leader is, and also started to see that function. I started to have staff come to my office wanting to have leadership conversations, asking me for leadership books, asking me to invest in particular areas for them to keep growing, not just in frontline work. And I'm really thrilled over the last 7 years. We've had about 30 of our staff members go into different kinds of leadership positions. We have some working overseas that are running programs in trafficking, some working in the government.
Right.
And it's really exciting to me to say, technically, you're now my boss.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that. And so I think that's been a major contribution. If you ask any of my staff, they can define to you what servant leadership is. They know that model, and we live and we breathe it together. That's
incredible. Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of the first time, so 12 years, 2000, yeah. Wow, it's been a while. 2007, I think, was the first time that I felt as if I was a leader. So it was the first time that, somebody had titled me. I was working in retail at the time, and I was at the helm of a good-sized retail store. And I remember at the time the owner had come to me and said, Cav, your success within this business, and likely going forward as a leader, is going to lie within your willingness to develop people that work for you. So at that time, that was, as a general manager, I had a store manager, and department managers that were working under my watch, I guess. And at that time, Larissa, that the concept of developing people that worked for me was almost, I felt like it was almost threatening for me. Now that speaks to kind of where I was at, of course, with myself and my own sort of personal development. But the idea to me didn't make sense. Fast forward the clock a few years, and I got it, and it makes a ton of sense. And so when you talk about, your passion or your commitment to developing people that work with you or that are part of the organization, I feel as if that could be a missing link, or it could be some really valuable insight for leaders today, which is, hey, you may sit here in terms of a hierarchy within your organization, within your business, but how are you developing that family? How are you developing those around you? What opportunities are you presenting for those, that you're either your junior associates or your representatives to take on more opportunity, and to be available for them to ask questions if they are intrigued, if they are excited about the concept of being a leader. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. What is that? So what are the, so with that, what are the, personal life. So just, in terms of how it is that you're functioning day to day within your role as, of course, as a professional, but then also how are you managing in terms of routine and so on? Is there any big shifts for you there? And what have you experienced?
So I think that most of the world's really facing the challenge of being at home, experiencing really high level isolation. I've actually experienced the opposite. So we're working more and we're around hundreds of people, needing to constantly be using different kinds of precautionary measures, but that really is what it looks like in being an essential service worker and serving vulnerable and or homeless populations. That just doesn't close down in a time like this.
Right.
One of the things I will be honest about is that I'm a very social person, but I'm an introvert. I definitely gain my energy and my time alone, and I also have my own art studio, my own art practice. And it's actually been a bit challenging in the last few weeks because it's required us to be even more involved and social. One of the things that I put my hand up for was not just to support my programs, but there's actually quite a few other Salvation Army programs that have a lot going on, and some of them are run by one leader, maybe two leaders. And so I've actually been lending some leadership support to some different units that we have, not necessarily always going on site, but really spending and investing a bit more time with their staff and their leadership team. And it's been a beautiful thing, but it's actually asked more of me, Cav, not just of my team and the needs and the challenges of our population that we support, but to really step up in that place. It's caused me to think about the difference between self-care and resilience. We talk a lot about self-care, and there's this idea, have a bath or do something relaxing for yourself. But I think that's actually mostly recuperative. That doesn't actually fill the gas tank back up. It's things like painting, or I'm Italian, so making pasta from scratch. It fills the gas tank in a way that nothing else does. And when you have worked over the years to build resilience, and I think resilience comes from walking in vulnerability, it comes from accessing counseling when you need to, it's allowing yourself to be accountable to mentors in your life. If you've built that to this point, then you're ready. And I think I'm feeling that, and even our team has been saying that to me. Larissa, we've dealt with worse. I am ready for this. Instead of that fear, or maybe I don't want to show up for my shift, I've had the opposite. I've had my teams going, I volunteer, like I'm here, I will show up. You need a shift covered, I will be there. It's my honor to stand the line. And so I've been reflecting, how has our team been at that place? And I think it's because we've been investing in building resilience, that our brains and our hearts and our mind and our soul is in a place that it can bounce back. And that's not just fake, like feeling strong. It actually means that you use strategic tools to build your fortification of yourself.
I hear that. That makes a ton of sense. I'm gonna do something. I want to give you a big high five in that, because I believe such a huge chunk of that is the way that you show up for them. So modeling your, resilience. So showing up at times where, maybe it's difficult to show up, or, the rest of the world is sort of, as we are at home, quarantining, isolating, and staying safe. I appreciate, so thank you for the work that you do and putting yourself at risk, and then also your team members stepping forward. I think that's a function of what they see from you. So leader to leader, good on you. I think that is the game right there, is to show up in a way that, again, inspires those around you, and not just that, as you say, not just showing up not showing up because they have to be resilient, or because their boss expects that of them, or their organization expects that of them, but it's because it's truly what they've been working on, really flexing and exercising that resilience muscle to show up at a time that may be difficult to show up, but hey, I've seen worse. People are going through stuff all around the world, and I want to continue playing my part. I think that's a function of the way that you show up for them. So huge high five. Good on you.
Well, I appreciate that, Cav. I'll share something that came up. I'm quite a creative, artistic person, and some of our team is actually quite in that vein as well. And we as a team, I'm a registered art therapist, so we'll do art therapy as a team, and we definitely try to explore creative avenues. And so a few weeks ago, I started to see that battle cry in our team really rise up, and just to see their strength We may not look like we are a fierce army of women, but we really, really are in heart. And so I actually took a little bit of time, and I really love poetry and spoken word. And so I actually wrote, whatever you want to call it, a battle cry, a poem, and I designed also this piece that goes around it that's called An Army of Deborahs. We have a program called Deborah's Gate, and it's named after a historical figure that's a female leader who brought peace in times of severe violence and abuse. And so we really identify with that moniker of Deborah. We actually call ourselves Deborahs. The clients we walk with, Daniels, are Deborahs. And so I actually put together a poem for our team to honor them called An Army of Deborahs. And I just walk through who we are and why we serve, and that we hold the line together. And if one of us isn't well or needs a moment, has to step back from the line, we hold the line till they come back. And I wasn't really sure. It was a bit vulnerable to create something like that,
Sure.
Especially as a leader of an organization. You don't always expect that from that place.
Yep.
And I sent it to our team. And the responses I got back was a flood, just a flood of the team saying, wow, this really reminded me that I'm a part of something. I'm not just taking transit and coming to work, risking it for myself. I'm showing up because we do this together, because I signed up for this before the pandemic and I served throughout. And just to see that heart, it was just this cool moment. I felt like as a leader, there's moments where we need to be able to hear the heartbeat of our organization and honor it and lift it up and speak it. And I think that's what leading often is to articulate that so that we have a shared place to go.
Sure. Yeah, I love that thought. Look, and I think what the value that I take away from that is the reminder that vulnerability has a place or needs a place in leadership. So when you set out to do something as cool and constructive as it nets out being, when you started out on that initiative, you weren't quite sure where it would land or how it would land on your team around you. But even still, you're willing to push through that. You're willing to push through, what are they going to think about this? And lo and behold, here we are, and you have some great feedback. So the power of vulnerability, maybe, and the willingness to push through on some initiatives that you may not think are ideal, but those are selfish thoughts, right? Yes. Who are we to decide how something is going to land on our team? I think it's very inherent that we feel like we know what is best for those around us, but what a great reminder that maybe we do and maybe we don't.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that's another takeaway I would say is that sometimes in crises like this, you feel like you know what the steps are to keep everyone kind of going towards the same goal and strategy. And it's actually sometimes the soft, unexpected, thoughtful things.
Yep.
So I'll give you an example. There's a campaign that started in the interior of BC to create hearts and put them up on social service units, hospitals, basically to show support for frontline workers, but to encourage the community. We're in this together. Yeah. So someone sent it to me and said it would be awesome if clients in your programs would want to create hearts, and we'll put them all over Salvation Army programs, like all over BC. And I wasn't really sure of the uptake, to be honest. I thought, I don't know, I'm kind of busy. We've got other things we should be focusing on. I'm trying to make sure we all got enough hand sanitizer. And like my head was in that space. But I thought, you know what, I'm not going to shut this down. I'm going to put it forward to some of the team and see what the survivors in our programs think. 2 days later, 4,000 hearts were made.
Oh, wow.
And they were put all over Salvation Army programs. And it's the survivors called it the Resilient Hearts campaign. And the reception that we have received from people who live in those programs, but also the community, has been so positive. And it also gave people something to do. It was something you can do with social distancing, which is actually quite challenging in programming right now. And it caused me to think, man, sometimes we just pass things up thinking there's not enough time, or maybe it's not the most productive activity. But that got us further in 1 week than any strategy could have. So I think sometimes when you lead in moments like this, be open to things that could be unexpected and thoughtful. We are humans, and there is something about connecting to that humanity. And I think that's something, Cav, you often reflect on in the work that you do, is really leading and being who you are from a wholehearted place.
Yeah, I think leadership starts within us. And so being willing to share what it is that's most important to us, not just professionally, but more importantly, personally. So when you talk about, and I'm super interested in your painting program, so thanks for sharing that. I've been finding a way to circle back to it. So maybe this is it. Can you tell us really quick how we would get in touch with, like, is there a website? Is there something that?
Yeah, so in terms of our programs, it is, you can find us at deborahsgate.ca. If you
Okay.
just type Deborah's Gate, it comes in right away. You can take a peek at some of the different programs and offerings that we have. Currently, right now, we're focused on offering them to survivors within our programs. We have about 700 in our different programs,
Okay.
and they're in confidential locations. But we do also seek to educate and support our community. We offer, in non-COVID times, we offer quite a bit of in-person training, and
Okay.
we do offer some webinar support and training too. So that's something that the community could get a little bit more connected to, especially if they either want to learn more about human trafficking or just to get a deeper understanding of some of these different creative coping tools, strategies, and rehabilitation programs that we're running.
Cool. Larissa, the art therapist, is there some, because I'm blown away by that. Is there anything that we can, those of us that are watching this, can we reach out or find anything?
Yeah,
You're willing to share?
my own work, and I also do a little bit of consulting for some companies, providing some different art therapy group and individual services. It's actually on my website, larissamaxwell.com.
LarissaMaxwell.com. Amazing. I'll definitely check that out. Yes, self-leadership, self-care, back to that. Definitely, to me, it's the most important thing. So I think we lead others the way that we're able to lead ourselves in our personal lives.
Can I ask you a question, Cav?
You absolutely
I think
can.
that as people are watching this, they're probably hearing my experience, and there might be a few that are working frontline, but most are working from home. Can you tell me what it's been like for you and how you've been able to run your business, keep your sanity, be in life with your family, all in one home now? Fill me in on how that's going.
You know, I had a, thanks for asking. So about 70% of what it is that I do is done from home as it is. And so there's a big component of my life that has sort of been the same. And so the minute that I step inside of my office where I am now, it's my bunker. It's definitely my place where I get to sort of close the door behind me and feel normal. You know, and so that at many moments is tough to find. I think just that ability to feel very centered and in where I am, and my work is very helpful in allowing me to do that. I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful that I have, you know, I'm kind of between about 15 and 25 hours a week right now of dedicated work. But that leaves a lot of hours in the day and in the weeks. And so getting a ton of great time with my kids. I have the luxury of doing that under normal circumstances, but now I think that time is being spent more intentionally. We don't have some of the fillers or buffers that we're used to having, things like the swimming pool, things like the 4-year-old, the community pool, I mean. So we're getting 2 hours going to the rec center and hanging out with the kids. Or my older one, my 4-year-old, is at preschool. We don't have those now. And so my wife right now is likely homeschooling or doing something educational upstairs with the boys while dad works. And then I have what I have is the hour, like the 60-minute to 90-minute or 2-hour windows or blocks throughout my day where I have an opportunity to do something. I've got carte blanche on sort of how I spend that time. And so I am somebody that has always lived with great intention. And so I'm making sure that I'm sort of checking boxes when it comes to what it is that fulfills me. So in those periods of time, I'm taking time to exercise, you know, and it could be something as simple as stretching in my office. I'm looking at a kettlebell and a couple of weights behind my desk here. And so I'll pick those up, for 5 or 8 or 10 minutes because it serves me well. The stretch, the 5-minute stretch, or even just the quick close my eyes and breathe for 2 or 3 minutes serves me incredibly well in keeping myself centered. Incredibly important for me to stay centered so that I can be available to those that I work with, not just in that capacity, but also for my family. If I'm taking care of myself and taking care of what I need, then I'm going to show up as more effectively as a father and more effectively as a husband and as a friend and as a colleague, hopefully as well. So yeah, thanks for asking the question. I'm not sure if I touched any of what you had asked, but I'm not used to getting the questions.
I know you're not. I think that's a great thing, though. I'm asking because I think that's really relative to the majority of people who are going to see this. I also think this season right now for all of us is a real test of something. Years ago, a mentor said something to me. She said, Larissa, life isn't so much about your happiness as it is about your character. And that was a very interesting thing to say to a young person, because especially the younger you are, you really think your life is about just everything that's going to make you happy and everything that's going to be good for you, not realizing that actually the majority of life is about shaping who you are. And I was thinking about that in this time. What is my character going to be like in this pandemic? Have I prepared myself to this moment where now it's time to put that into practice?
Yep.
Something that I often think about is, do we mind being alone with our own thoughts? Or do we spend our entire day distracting, whether that's social media, our devices, people in our lives, work, busyness, the draw of being busy? Sure. And now we're finding so much more quiet time. People are revisiting things like puzzles that we haven't done in years. And it causes me to think this is a moment for our character. Many people that are choosing to self-isolate to keep our community safe, that is a character choice. Sure. And yeah, it might involve a lot of Netflix, it might involve a lot of junk food or whatever's happening, and I think it's okay. But I also think for us to remind ourselves, this is a moment to show our character and to go, you know what, I actually am okay with my own thoughts. I'm okay to sit within my home or my family and not constantly need all the things that I want and that make me happy. I am okay with what I have.
Great point. I think what I've referred to this in the past, and I do it carefully, but I think the opportunity that we have kind of within this period is, look, one part of it is, I think those of us that are conscious and that are sort of taking that, that deep look into how it is that we're living our lives, we don't necessarily have a choice but to do that. Like there's this moment of truth that I think is happening for a lot of us. And that magnifying glass, if there is one, is having a look at how is it that you're conducting your day-to-day? Where are you spending your energy? And I think for the vast majority of us, there's a lot of learning to be done there. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to evolve that forward. So if you've decided, or I've decided that, hey, my diet, I'm not eating 3 meals a day or 4 meals a day, and maybe I'm not eating nutritiously, or I'm not taking in what I need. Not getting enough time with the kids. Maybe I'm spending too much downtime watching brainless TV. All of which is important. I think all of that, it's important for us to incorporate all of those things into our life at some level, but how much of it? And I think that's where the opportunity comes from in us. My hope is that on the other side of whatever this, wherever this thing is going to take us, that we end up with a more, a more deeply aware sort of conscious society as a whole that says, yeah, my values, right? So I do a ton of work within values with those that I work with. And yeah, it's an opportunity to redefine some of those values and spend more time in places that serve us well, and maybe start to scale back in areas that don't. So again, if there was an opportunity during this period of time, I think it's for that to happen, which is to take a little bit deeper of a dive into how we spend our time, how we spend our energy, reevaluate, and hopefully, reframe the way that looks going forward.
Yeah.
I think it can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah. I think I would say as like a wrap-up thought from myself is that this will pass. The world has gone through many, even more horrific circumstances, and other places in the world have been going through things even right now on top of a pandemic. We will get through this. We have seen the world come back and be incredibly resilient. But I want us to think about, how did we manage ourselves in this time? When we look back and say, I actually lived through a pandemic, or if we're actually journeying with people who are not well in the pandemic, how did we act? What was our character? What did we learn? What do we take away from it? I know that I hope, and I know it's not going to be perfect. I hope myself and the staff team I'm privileged to lead, we can look back and feel deep pride in how we walked with the most integrity that we could, the most character that we could, the most courage and the most heart in a really disheartening time, because it will pass. And so I think that's just the part I've been reflecting on the last few days.
Courage and heart within a disheartening time.
Yes.
I love that. Thanks, Larissa. Really appreciate your thoughts. Really appreciate you spending the time with me. I wish you and the team all the best, your family. Stay safe, stay healthy.
You
And
too,
we'll see you in person on the other side.
Sounds great.
Take care.